So, after my True Confessions video, and I hope that doesn't put you off because if all you want are tutorials that lead from A to B and achieve the desired result, well, that's a setup. You're getting that desired result because you're using an image that the guy recording the video knows is going to turn out a certain way. I'm trying to teach you skills that will span any image. And, that's kind of a foolhardy quest, but hey, that's education. How do you teach people to handle any situation that arises? And for here, we're talking about imagery. So, the natural starting point that I want you to use as a reflex, a fallback position, and it won't be wasted, even though we're not going to accept the results we get, is to take this cropped, perfectly, the image size and resolution is just right. We're going to unlock it, right click out here, and convert it to a smart object. And then we can rename these files. I'm going to do that off screen so you don't have to watch me type. And then the first thing to do, and this is not always do the first thing. It's just one of those things that works the most is to go up to Filter and Camera Raw. And you know from part 1 of this series, as soon as this photo looks okay, right? It doesn't look bad. You want to see it look bad? Click on Auto and then hit the letter P and go, oh my goodness. But some of you are saying, yeah, it's a little bright, a little overdeveloped, don't you think? And yeah, I do think. But as a before and after, oh my goodness, it's pretty clear that this is an underexposed image. So let's look at the exposure. And it's moved quite a bit. What happens if we back this down? Not extreme, but back it down a little bit. Now hit the letter P. Now we're not taking it to such extremes, but I can still see this sky up here. Look at how dark this is compared to the surrounding hill. How can you fight that? Now we can use masks, there's all kinds of ways to do this. But check the words. What do these words mean? You're not going to hurt anything because if you drag the contrast over, what happens? You say, well, that didn't work. Don't try to put it back. Just hit Command Z, which resets this to where it was before. What happens if I drag the contrast the other direction? And I'm going all the way just to see what the extremes are. Command Z. So moving the contrast just a touch might be helpful in one direction or the other. And you watch the image. Because even though auto sometimes seems to work like magic, it's not magic. It's an algorithm. And that algorithm is sometimes incredibly good and other times completely useless. Here we're somewhere in the middle where it's pretty good, but there are things left to do. So you play with this. What happens with the whites? What happens if we go, whoa, my goodness. And all the way off, oh my goodness, is that good? Is that bad? What do we want? Where's a good spot for it? What about the blacks? No. And then where in here is, and I'm not watching this number. My eyes are here. And I don't know where that's going. I'm trying to figure out what looks good. Okay? All the way through here. Now the vibrance, I don't want to pump up this sky because I already know there's some noise here. And the more vibrance I add, the more noise I'm going to get. And the more artificial this sky looks. So Command Z. Clarity is great. Fabulous for pulling out detail in these rocks. Fabulous. This will give us all kinds of extra detail. it also exacerbates, makes worse. If you don't know what that word is, it just takes what's wrong and makes it even worse, because this noise, these little pixels up here, stray pixels of color, are this is what clarity does. It looks for changes in luminance between one pixel and another, and it enhances it. It exaggerates it. So I'm going to hit Command Z. We could mask these things off. These are more advanced techniques. We're not there yet. And work independent, separating the sky from the foreground, separating the foreground from the background and the sky. Okay, lots of things we can do, but we're not there yet. So for right now, we're looking at how do we play with these sliders in order to make this image as visually pleasing as possible. Okay, so we have changed the auto settings significantly. And if you're not playing along, just click auto so you can see with this image where they were and where I am. It does not mean that I picked the perfect settings. I'm just going by my eye. Your perception, my perception, two different things. We have lots of other channels here. What happens if we introduce an S-curve, a contrast curve? What happens if we deepen the shadows a little bit and enhance the lights? Now again, hit the letter P, before, after. This little S-curve, see how it goes up and then down? This is a contrast curve. Almost always helps an image look better. Now we're trying to use this in a very subtle way. Again, sharpening. Sharpening would be great for all this detail. Terrible in the sky. So again, I'm going to leave this alone because I know it'll make the sky worse, and we're not going to go through all those gyrations in order to mask off the sky and treat these as two different images in order to solve those problems. We're not there yet. The HSL grayscale, this is wonderful. Leave hue and saturation alone. Come to the luminance channel and say, what happens if I play? A lot of oranges, huh? Some yellows in here. Not really much red. What happens if I pull the red? Not a lot of change, huh? So I'm going to hit Command Z. There's a little bit. Yeah, the reds are affecting a little bit. And if we pull this just slightly, are we helping, hurting? Do we even know what's happening? Kind of darkening up over here, which is a good thing. What's happening to the foreground? So you watch, and you play around. What works, what doesn't? What happens when I pull the oranges? Now, that, you would think, I want to darken this because I want this to be brilliant. Well, what happened when the oranges went into the negatives? Look at that contrast change between the sky and the hills. For my money, that became more interesting when the contrast moved towards lighter oranges. Pull, pull. You play with it. Don't go crazy, although that is kind of interesting. But we're not going for kind of an art piece. We may end up going for an art piece because, like I said, there are issues with this image. Play with the yellows, not too much in the yellows. You can see up here, watch the lights right there. See how we are playing with that? But if this gets lighter, that adds a little bit more contrast between these two hills. Again, P. P before, after. Are we improving this image? Then we got the blues. This may be a lost cause because if we deepen this, oh, the sky looks better, right? No, the sky looks phony. And it's going to look phony when we print. So you look where, and maybe somewhere in there, just lightening it ever so slightly. Again, P, before and after. Now, I will confess, when I was desperate, I came over here, tried dehaze, tried adding grain, trying to, since we had noise, what happens if we even add more noise? What happens if we go to black and white or, a monotone? It would happen if I tried so many different things. For right now, let's just leave this as it is and say, okay. Now, the bonus about what we just did is this is editable. When we processed our ding straight out of the camera, we just had a plain background image. Here, we can come back out, double click on Camera Raw, and change any setting from now until we print. So that is the bonus. So what's the before and after? Click on this, before and after. Is this an improved version of the image? And I'll tell you, this is a lot better than anything I came up with at school. Hit Command 1 to look at this at full size and look up in the sky. And yeah, there's noise up here. There's a little bit of noise. But maybe the image is interesting enough to allow us to get away with it. We can try some other tricks, but for right now, I'm going to say I'm surprised. This is better than anything I came up with today. I was distracted because I had a classroom full of kids, 216 kids funneling through 6 periods. And is it great? Is this something I would print and think everybody would go, wow, that's great? No. But it is the image I chose for these tutorials, and it's the one we're working with. So we're trying to make it as interesting as possible. Okay, sorry for the long video, but very necessary because you need to know about Camera Raw's power and how many different things you can do there. And if you make a mistake, you can always double click, go back, and change some of those settings.